Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Just want to get a little bit of some background information of what you think Q is, or who or what Q is. So what is Q? Who is Q? Is it one individual person? Is it a group of people? What is Q?
Right. Based upon my understanding and opinion, I think Q represents likely a group of individuals that are located, whether it's in the military intelligence or the DOJ, different aspects of our government. Basically, we could call them white hats, insiders, if you will, that are working with the presidential administration, might even be various people within the administration itself, and they are essentially leaking data through 8chan, now originally 4chan, but the anonymous online posting boards of 8 and 4chan. They're leaking real-time data of their takedown of the deep state. And they've been doing this since early November, because it looks like in November that's when things were really going to start getting hot, and they essentially had to start warning the American public, if you will. But of course, they can't warn us through the mainstream media. They can't warn us through, even the alternative media, because then various people would be targeted. They had to do it anonymously, and they had to do it where people would be able to choose to follow it and be able to follow it anonymously. So it's really just like a very multidimensional operation strategic scheme in play, where they are giving us data of what's really going on behind the scenes, a little bit of it, not all of it, of course, and they are warning the public through it. So that is Q, and that's kind of their operative.
Do you think Trump is part of this? Do you think he actually, sends out this information himself, or does he have other people doing it?
No, I think other people are doing it, and it's likely other people are telling Trump what to do. Trump's the president of the United States. He doesn't have time. He doesn't have, and so many eyes are going to be on him. So Trump is essentially going along with the plan, in my eyes, and he's likely getting told, like, hey, maybe confirm this specific thing on your Twitter account. We're going to post this on the boards. And then Trump goes, okay, and maybe he doesn't even post on his Twitter. Maybe it's somebody else handling it. But Trump is just there going along with the plan.
So they're giving us this information, and they do it with codes. They don't come out and say, hey, what's going to happen today? Comey's going to come out with a book, and we're going to have reporters there, and all of a sudden things are going to go wrong. But they give us certain codes. Is there a reason why they just can't come out and just tell us flat out, what's really going on? Why do they have to use these codes?
So there's many reasons in my eyes why it's so cryptic in nature. One reason is the legality of it and national security concerns. They can't come out and straight say who and what's going on precisely, but essentially this data they're giving us is a lot of questions. It's a lot of code, and it's it's subtle communication that the people have to essentially put the dots together and find out themselves and connect the dots themselves. So not only is it bypassing, legal and security things, but it's also almost a spiritual in nature, because people really have to choose to see this information, choose to believe it, choose to run with it. So it's kind of a multi-layered operation going on here. It's genius, really, when you kind of think about it.
Not everyone is on board with Q. And I'm talking about the alternative media. I'm talking about, certain alternative media sites where they completely say this is a psyop. This is no way is Q real, and they're saying that it's being done to confuse the public. I mean, do you really think that this is a psyop where they're trying to confuse what is happening, out in the world?
In honor of proper discernment and finding what the absolute truth is, I always play devil's advocate with myself. I'm always asking, is it a psyop? Is it controlled opposition? Are we being duped? And I try to piece the dots together regarding that argument, but at least where I come from my experience and my understanding, that just doesn't make sense. And I understand that we're all going to disagree on various subjects, because we're all human. We all have different, come from different places. We've had different experiences and come across different knowledge. But from what I've come across, it would not be, I just don't see Q being a psyop. With all the confirmations we've had, with all the things that have, manifested in the news after Q references something, or maybe came out on Trump's Twitter after Q mentioned something, there's so many confirmations. And when you look at the big picture, the idea of white hats, the idea of an alliance, if you will, or various positive factions working behind the scenes in the military to take down this corrupt elite, it's been talked about far before Q. I heard about this idea of mass arrests and all that about probably 4 or 5 years ago in the very early stages of my kind of truth seeking. So when Q came along, it wasn't like it was this wondrous concept to me. It just really confirmed everything that I had been hearing, and it was really, for me, the alliance taking the next step, going to the next stage of this operation in place. So, and to be a PSYOP, it's just way, there's way too many things. We're actually seeing the deep state retaliate. We wouldn't be seeing that if it was a PSYOP. We're seeing messages come out through Linda Rothschild's Twitter. We have so many things going on, a fire at Clinton's house and 2 fires in Trump Tower, and how many sealed indictments are there being found throughout the country right now, and all these planes going down and military choppers crashing. I mean, piece all the dots together and then ask yourself, how? How would this be a psychological operation? Or at least let's specify a psychological operation put out by the deep state specifically. It just doesn't make sense to me.
So you think there's like a silent war going on behind the scenes where, I mean, you mentioned like fire in Trump Tower, fire in Clinton's house, ships, hitting different ships and planes going down. So you think they're battling behind the scenes, and the two factions within the United States, they're battling this whole thing out right in front of us?
Absolutely. And I don't think, this shadow civil war, if you want to call it that,
I like that.
Really been going on, we could say, for decades. Look at Kennedy's assassination. Look at Eisenhower mentioning the military-industrial complex in his farewell speech. So we can kind of pinpoint different players that have tried to combat this cabal, but it just, this cabal is so, they're so dirty with how they play. They'll go to the ends of the earth and burn it all down just to save their own skins and gain more power and control. So it's been going on for a long time, but I think now it's getting to a serious head, and for many reasons. But with Q, we're seeing that shadow civil war essentially become not shadow anymore. It's open. It's there for us to see much more of and piece much more of the dots together with. And now, in my opinion, with the president that we have, he was a person who's not going to go along with the cabal plans. We've had presidents for decades that were either going along with the plans, or maybe they were blackmailed or whatnot, but now we have a president who is not. I think he was asked by military intelligence to take this job, and he said, yeah, I can't watch the world burn, so I'm going to do this for the country and for humanity.
I mean, who do you think has control right now? Do you think the deep state has control of the situation, or do you think Trump and the Patriots have control of the situation? Who's in control right now?
Oh, very good question that you asked there, and that reminds me of something I was just going to mention a minute ago that slipped my mind. I think, of course, different factions are going to control different things, and it's not necessarily so black and white like Patriots versus cabal. There's different factions of the cabal. We're watching a lot of people throw each other under the bus right now, and at least on the side of the Alliance or the Patriots as well, we have Q, which is one group, but I'm sure there's also different factions that we aren't seeing behind the scenes, and they're all trying to work together, networking in this war going on. And I think the Patriots, though, we'll call them that, the Alliance, that's kind of a blanket term, but it encompasses it pretty well. They are gaining much more control than they've really ever had. Now that they have somebody in the presidential seat, now that it's been said the NSA databases, or some of them at least, have been turned over to this white hat group, and various people are getting fired, taking out of their positions. Some people are getting in. So the power is, of course, swaying much more, we could say, to the side of light than it has ever been in the past.
Now, you mentioned, taking control of the NSA computer systems. They also have, I think, military intelligence. Do you think right now, if they have control over all of this, they can see, they can hear pretty much everything then? That, everything that's going on with the deep state.
Right, and that's the beautiful part of all of this going on. You could call it karma, if you will, but look at all of the technological systems that we have for surveillance and tracking and whatnot. For instance, social media or our phones or pretty much anything. It was all originally created by, you could say, the deep state to track us and to foment their agenda, and now that is all being utilized for their takedown. What Guantanamo Bay was originally built for, you could have terrorists or whoever in these FEMA camps, it's been said, were created for the American public, right. But now it's all going to be used for them. And social media, of course, they've used to track us, but the people are using it to share information and wake each other up, and now that's being utilized to combat their plans. So yeah, it's all beautiful to see this whole Great Awakening process roll out.
Yeah, you see the attack with Facebook where, the whole thing about their, everyone's private information. And of course, us and the alternative media have been talking about this for a very long time, where they've been spying on us, watching what we do. They have our information. People just blew it off like, not really. They don't, you're just making that up. And now it's all coming out where, look what Facebook has been doing. Look what Google's been doing. Look what Twitter's been doing, YouTube. And to me, all these social media platforms, it looks like, and I think Q said it, that, there's a central algorithm where basically, to me, this whole entire system with all these different social media outlets, this is their spying, apparatus system, which they use.
Totally. What a better way to subtly bring some tracking technology that the public would never want out to the public under the guise of social media. But, and that's another, you talking there brought up a point in my mind, in that on a superficial level, people hear the idea that, oh yeah, Facebook's taking your data and Twitter's taking your data, and it doesn't really hit them deep. They don't realize necessarily what that could encompass. Like, oh yeah, what if they just had my data? No big deal, yada yada. I have nothing to hide. But I think on a much deeper level, once we're beginning to understand these algorithms and these connections and what they're actually doing, it goes so much deeper in that they're utilizing this data to sway the whole collective consciousness their way. So they're using it to advertise. It definitely creeps me out when I mention something and then I'm scrolling through Twitter or Instagram and an ad comes up for exactly what I was just talking about verbally. And also it's used for, of course, censorship. These algorithms can start specifically not letting content that would be harmful to the agenda of the deep state be seen on social media. And then there'll be shadow banning, as it's so termed, or demonetization protocols, or even now we've gotten to the topics of censorship, straight censorship, people talking about things that, are getting way too heated, so they literally delete channels and delete Twitter accounts and remove posts. And it's a very dangerous game, extremely dangerous.
Q mentioned, and we're talking about Facebook and Google and censorship and things like that. Now, Q did mention the Internet Bill of Rights. Do you agree with that we should have we have the Bill of Rights now where everyone is allowed to speak freely. Do you agree with the Internet Bill of Rights?
Yeah, I suppose so. If our freedom, if our right of expression needs to be written down on a piece of paper and signed for corporations or businesses to abide by, then yes, I would be for that. And of course, I would read the document, make sure it's right and just and whatnot. But of course, I'm all for anything that's going to give us what we inherently, naturally should already have.
Now, Q and Trump, both of them have been continually pushing the idea of going after Comey, Clinton, Rod Rosenstein, Loretta Lynch, and that has not let up at all. And it looks like these people are now bickering amongst each other, throwing each other under the bus like you just mentioned. Are we going to see something happen Are we going to see, these indictments, these sealed indictments, be broken, and some of these individuals, maybe videos, I think there was mentions of videos of Clinton and other things. You think we're going to see any of this actually come out?
Yes, absolutely. We absolutely will. I don't have any doubt about that. And I guess talking about Q being a whole PSYOP thing, I think a lot of people just don't realize how impatient they're being and the depth of the takedown. Because, I mean, these sealed indictments might keep growing. There's, I think, 28,000, nearly 25 to 28,000 that have been filed in the last 5 or 6 months, which is unheard of. Usually it's just about 1,000 a year. So this is not normal. And we're going to, there will continue being exposure of all the people in the FBI, Comey, Lynch, Clinton, Podestas, and whatnot. This is going to continue, but it will reach a head. And that will be, of course, we can't throw specific dates on there. Some people have been burned and yelled at for doing so. But I see it really coming to a head sometime this year. I think it will be this year, 2018, because there's many, many deadlines. I mean, our planet, our whole society cannot sustain itself unless this cabal, this deep state, is rooted out and cleaned up.
You don't think these people will try to hide or run or maybe even commit suicide? I mean, I don't know.
I think many of them already are, and they could be running to their underground military bases. They could be running to Antarctica, bases in Antarctica. They could be, even trying to escape off planet, even though I think that's being handled. They're not able to do that. So they're really trying to be cornered. They are being cornered. And I think you mentioned suicide. That might be, honestly, once we start coming down to it, a way that a whole lot of them do escape. But otherwise, they'll eventually be put into submission. I think they will see the end of the tunnel. There is no end of the tunnel per se. And they will. How many people have we seen step down for various kind of vague reasons, sexual misconduct and this and that? So there will be a time where they are rounded up because they aren't giving up. So maybe we have a kind of mass arrest event happen where teams around the country, military teams, are activated to swoop in on those that won't give up, and we'll see the emergency broadcast system go off or something to that effect. Kind of visualizing. Speculating here, but yes, very soon I think it will come to a head.
Do you think once these people start to realize, and I'm sure there's many of these individuals, since there's 25, 28,000 indictments, all different type of cases, do you think that they will say, something, it's time to have the event of all events, false flag? I mean, almost like a 9/11. Where we can distract pretty much everything. I mean, do you think they'll take it that far?
Absolutely. The deep state has always, of course, been trying to pull false flags whenever it's beneficial to their agenda. Like you mentioned, 9/11. In more modern times, we're seeing so many different mass shootings occur. For instance, Las Vegas, Parkland incident, and some others over the last few years. And what's really amazing is the internet and the way people share information, and they're so active and passionate in doing so, and that they're beginning to expose these false flags, all the inconsistencies. The deep state just seems to rush them to the surface, and of course they have to because their time is getting limited. So it's just so easy for the public to pick up on that. So the question, though, are they going to go bigger and bigger since their time is getting so limited? On one hand, I don't think that's viable because the Patriots or this alliance, they are gaining much more power, much more of an ability to stop these false flags. I had heard some data one time about even mini nukes being trafficked into America that were apprehended by Patriots, and various other events similar to that just don't bubble to the surface, don't manifest as a false flag, luckily. And in some circles, from what I've heard, people are suggesting that, well, maybe the deep state is going to pull the false flag of all false flags. They've already done 9/11 and shootings and all this. The biggest they can go now, and of course mentioning Syria, chemical false flag, but the biggest they can go now is in space. something in the atmosphere, like a faked invasion, if you will, from another species. And the deep state, certain agencies do have technologies that are very good holographic technologies. They could either use that to make something up in the sky and freak a lot of people out, or they could even use some of the anti-gravity platforms that they already have and maybe kind of fake some kind of, who knows, call it a prophecy or call it an invasion or whatever they did. They could fake it, but again, I just don't think that's viable. I think the white hats are doing a lot behind the scenes, a lot that we're not seeing to make sure various operations, various nefarious operations that the deep state wants to pull do not happen.
Now, you mentioned an invasion, which is very interesting because that, if I remember correctly, that was one of their plans, to have an invasion to, scare the public, to get them in line, and that was the deep state's plan at one time, to have some type of an invasion. So that could be a viable type of false flag. Another one is cyber attack. I mean, the cyber attacks are pretty good because they don't really have to prove anything. I mean, all they have to do is report it on the corporate media, tell you something happened, tell you that they hit the financial systems, tell you that the power went out, or actually bring the power down in certain towns or cities, and people would believe it.
Yeah, those are some very good points in regards to the faked alien invasion. That was mentioned by Dr. Werner von Braun, one of the biggest, if you will, Operation Paperclip scientists that came over from Nazi Germany. Werner von Braun warned one of his understudies, Dr. Carol Rosen, about that's the last false flag that they could pull, And Ronald Reagan mentioned it during a speech of his. He said, I don't see any other event that would unite all of us rather than a species from another world coming down to attack us, or I'm paraphrasing, of course, but something to that effect. So a lot of people have been talking about it, and but and even Clinton herself. There was an interesting leaked document that came out near the end of 2016, kind of around the time the WikiLeaks emails did. And I'm not sure if it was verified or not, but it was very interesting in what it said. It was by the Benenson Strategy Group, which was the Clinton campaign, or Clinton's strategy group for her campaign, and it was called Project Firesign, and it detailed using these holographic technologies to make something look like it was up in the air, to basically, it was saying salvage the Clinton campaign, or salvage, it was more so talking about the presidential campaign, but obviously the deep state could do this as well, and essentially use as a false flag. So I think it's taken a lot more seriously behind the scenes than a lot of people do on the surface. Oh yeah, fake alien invasion, but this is serious stuff. They could definitely pull that, and with all the psychological programming, all the mind control people have regarding those topics of space technologies and cosmic civilizations, it's definitely viable. It'd be one of the most viable, but I don't think it's going to happen, of course, because a lot of people are becoming aware of it, taking it seriously, educating themselves, and white hats behind the scenes are preventing that. But then hack is funny. You mentioned that, but in regards to a hack, I don't know too much about information technology and all the ins and outs about that, but I can just go off big picture feeling of it. Again, I think the Patriots would have countermeasures in play to prevent that. Funny, just the other week, I think last week, we saw a hack in Iran where a bunch of Iranian systems were hacked, and then they found an American flag on their screens, and it said, "Don't mess with our elections." And this was in like hundreds of thousands of computers around Iran, made the news. So I think our guys, the people working for the white hats, they have technology that renders any kind of hack the deep state wants to pull pretty obsolete. I'm sure they have fantastic minds and fantastic systems, maybe even quantum computing systems, that are preventing all of that from occurring.
We had the Syrian chemical attack, which a lot of the alternative media, even there are certain representatives that are saying that this is a complete false flag. Ron Paul saying it's a false flag. Even Germany, their MPs are saying, some of them are coming out saying it's a false flag. Russia, China. I mean, everyone's out there saying it's a false flag, but Trump went ahead and fired missiles into Syria without congressional approval, without anything. And, he at the end said mission was accomplished. And basically everyone is saying that he went along with the deep state. They're controlling him now, and we're off to war. Now, do you think we're off to war? Do you think he did this because he really believed that there was a chemical attack?
Right. And a lot of people are thinking that, but at least in my view, that just doesn't make sense, does it? Everybody, like you mentioned, is saying false flag, and it was so obvious. Even some of the mainstream people are just saying, "Oh, false flag," even throwing the word "false flag" out there, which was very interesting as well. People getting much more courageous and open into speaking of these quote theories, if you will. But then Trump goes and does that. So you really got to ask yourself, well, if he says mission accomplished, right? What does he mean by that? What mission? Did he specify the precise mission? Well, a lot of people are saying, yeah, he was calling Assad an animal, and he went there and was attacking Assad, Syria, right? And then I asked myself, well, why did for years Trump continuously say that let's not invade Syria, let's get our hands out of that, and even a week ago said let's get our troops out of there, right? So he's always took a non-interventionist Syria policy. Then he goes and just changes his mind all of a sudden. It doesn't make sense. So when asking yourself mission accomplished, well, I'm asking what specific mission? What did those missiles precisely hit? If we're thinking of an operation in terms of a, not only physical military operation, but you have to take the psychological picture into play as well in the mainstream. Of course, this attack occurs. A lot of the mainstream media, the typical deep state corporate media outlets, we can call them. I don't like to say mainstream because not all means, that's kind of a black and white term. But we'll say the deep state corporate outlets, if they're saying Assad pulled the false flag and Trump wants to do something about that more overtly, he's going to have to kind of go along the lines of the public narrative. But what if he sent them in and hit some cabal targets? Use the public narrative for a private reason, and that could, that's kind of how I feel like it may have been planned out. So I'm curious as to see what exactly was hit in Syria. Some people are saying that certain chemical depots that were actually owned by multinational corporations that had interesting Western-connected people on the boards there. Some people are finding evidence that it could have very well been deep state depots or deep state operations that were taken out in the Syria false flag, and that would make a lot more sense than Trump falling for something, foolishly going in there. And he still wants to pull out, like he's still pulling the troops out of Syria. What Putin said, it's don't do it again, we're not going to attack or do anything right now, but don't do it again. And I think Assad left, skipped Syria a couple days beforehand and got out of the country even. So take all those different pieces into play, all those different dots, and I think the picture begins to become a little bit more clear as to what's going on.
Now, after that was done, what's very funny is that Nikki Haley came out and said, yeah, we're not pulling the U.S. troops out of Syria. And to me, that seemed like it was a direct message to Trump from the deep state saying, yeah, that's not happening.
Could have been. Or if Nikki Haley is a part of this, or what if Nikki Haley that was more of a message to the deep state? We can flip that around too. We're not pulling our troops out, aka, we're not going to not go in if you're going to try and pull something, if you will. That's one way to think about it. Or, yeah, like you mentioned, it could have been deep state. We don't really know where Nikki Haley's, where she's really aligning. I'm not sure too much about her or her history. So
the only reason I say that is because she made another statement saying that, we have to get Assad because if we don't get him, there could be a chemical attack in New York. And, for a white hat to say that, to scare the public, it doesn't make sense. I mean, the deep state, I understand. Right. I mean, me personally, they like to scare the public, like, ISIS is coming after us, the shootings. They put it out there to scare the public. And when she said that, where, we have to get Assad or we could have a chemical weapons attack in New York. And I remember a couple of years ago in New York in the subway systems, they did have a chemical attack gas drill where, someone, either dropped a canister or something and the subways filled up with gas and they had this special drill to prepare for something like that. So I think a lot of these drills and a lot of things they've done in the past was to prepare for something in the future. They might need it, so they would need to see how people react, what happens when this occurs, and I think that's why she might have said that.
Those are some good points, some things that I wasn't too aware of. Although the way she would specify New York is interesting to me. It's as if the deep state was planning on something in New York involving chemicals, and that could have been a way for the white hats to say, we know what you're doing. Specify New York, say, you better not try it because we already know. And that was a subtle way for them to get that message out there. Just kind of speculating, thinking possibilities here. But yeah, that is definitely weird, and always be on guard, surely, for drills and for various things that could lead to one false flag being pulled.
Now, where do you see all this going with Q continually dropping this information, having people research it? Said you expect things to happen either later this year, 2018, where we might see arrests, where we might see other things happen. The reason why I'm saying all this is because Q did mention November 11th, 2018. This is Veterans Day, the parade, and this is going to be the parade of all parades. And, people speculated on this where they thought, this could be where the troops are coming home. Maybe they'll be marching these criminals down the street. What is your take on what this parade of parades, and also I think it's the 100-year anniversary of World War I, when the war came to an end. So I just wanted to get your take on what you think this November 11th parade would actually be.
Yeah, that's of course Q did mention that day, which is one of the reasons why I do think 2018 might be it. And that day, Patriots, not only, you mentioned Veterans Day, Veterans Day, and parade, and very big spiritual significance of the day 11/11 itself. So there's just a lot of that's a lot of alignment right there to this parade being something else, something we might not be expecting, and marching the perps down the street. That'd be a funny one. We're all hoping for that, of course. And it could very well be maybe a disclosure, because if it's going to have a specific parade about the military, maybe it's going to be used as a way to disclose certain platforms, technologies, or something that things that need to make their way out to the public as well. That's just kind of the hopefulness inside of me as well, and the me looking at the possibilities. But yes, I do think I think this summer is going to be huge. Everybody's wanting it now. Q's mentioning April showers. April showers bring May flowers. So maybe next month we're going to see some things begin to manifest. But at the same time, a lot of what's going to need to happen is going to happen all at once, or at least how I see it, because we were talking about many of these deep state folks just not wanting to give up. So if they're really not going to want to give up, there's going to have to be an operation to sweep them up, at least the way I'm seeing it. I would say to everybody out there, be prepared, with at least 2 weeks of food and water on hand and whatnot, to be comfortable for a couple weeks in case certain systems were to go offline, banking systems, electronic systems.
Why do you think that would happen, like the certain systems going down? If
we were to get to a point where a mass arrest scenario would need to take place, and the emergency broadcast system would go off nationwide or whatnot, there might be some disruptions I see, or if there was a financial system changeover, reevaluation or something to that effect, and systems could go offline for a little bit. By a little bit, I just mean 3 to 5 days. I don't see it more than a week, but it's just always a possibility that could be had.
Now, you're saying the systems will go down because of the white hats or the black hats?
White hats, excuse me. Yeah, specify that. White hats. So, in a mass arrest scenario, the black hats would be arrested. Various white hat teams would swoop in from around the country, and it may take a couple days for this to happen. and just kind of thinking of the logistics of it all here. So yeah, just it would be a white hat operation.
So you think they would bring it down so they couldn't maybe access money, access the internet, access anything to stop them?
Right, exactly.
Now you mentioned April showers, and a lot of people think that April showers is the bombing of Syria, and it's supposed to bring May flowers. What do you think is coming in May?
I haven't that specific one. I haven't really put too much. At least I haven't gone in one specific direction with that one. I've thought about the Syria one too. That could be it. It could be something else. Q's been saying watch the water. So I wonder if those two are intertwined in some way.
Yeah, that's very interesting too. Watch the water.
Watch the water. And in May, April showers bring May flowers. So in May, we might be seeing even a larger Inspector General report come out. We just had the one come out, of course, about Andrew McCabe. Maybe in May, they're planning on releasing a larger one that's going to lead to the ousting of some others or actual arrests. Speculation in my head, but could be.
What do you think the deep state, what do you think the black hats, the white hats, we said, sometime in 2018 there'll be other arrests. Do you think that any information is going to flow to the general public where they'll mention anything where it allows them to see a lot more? Because right now it's really people who are looking at Q, the alternative media, but people who will pay attention to the corporate media, they're kind of blind to all this. Yes, I know like Roseanne Barr, and there's an article out, about Q, but most of the people don't have no clue whatsoever what's going on. Do you think eventually they're going to mention this or leak some of this out to bring the rest of the public into what we've been talking about?
Part of me thinks that might never happen. And I think it'll be something that everybody will come to understand is actually legitimate someday. But I don't know if we'll ever get confirmation through a super high source that everybody wants to see Q validated on. And I think that's just for the nature of choosing it and seeing it for oneself. And once we become all aware of it, maybe we might see that confirmation eventually take place. But I think first what we'll see through mainstream sources is the actual news of arrests, of huge things begin to hit, and that those things will wake everybody up. Those things will begin to shock the mainstream public's consciousness, and then they'll ask so many questions from all of their conspiracy friends who they put off for so long, and then those people like you and I and us conspiracy theorists will be able to really bring the awareness and the understanding to that mainstream consciousness, and that's what's going to validate Q. I don't think it coming from a mainstream source will be before that, if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. I really want to thank you for being on the X22 Report Spotlight. Jordan, how can people see your work again?
But they find my work on Destroying the Illusion on YouTube and DestroyingTheIllusion.com. Those would be the two best places to find it. And then you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Gab, and Instagram as well.
Jordan, once again, thank you very much for being on the X22 Report Spotlight. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you for having me. Thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you.